Hello everyone and welcome back to another tutorial, and this time we're going to be using GIMP, the GNU image manipulation program, my favorite Photoshop alternative, free and open source. And today what we're going to be emulating is the iOS 17 contact card, and it's a kind of certain aesthetic that we're going for. Basically, it's kind of a portrait-like photo where you put some text on the back and that's just your wallpaper. And as for some examples, you can see on the screen here. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. And first we want to just pick the photo that we're looking for. And there's a couple of qualities that make a certain photo better or worse than others. As an example, this is a good example of something that might work pretty well. I found that close-ups work pretty well for this. And I'm thinking maybe we can put the text right over here, kind of obscured slightly by the object and my hand. And then here's another example where I think it might work, where I would crop in here and then maybe put the text over here. Ideally, so some of the qualities that you're looking for in the ideal image is one, it's a close-up works best in my opinion, and failing that you can even grab one that has kind of a plainer background, because if the background's too noisy then you might have problems with the text showing up. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with this one right here. Load up your GIMP and import the image just by dragging it in. Alright, and here it is. So the first step to doing this is cutting out the object and applying a blur to the background if you haven't already. This one already has a blur, but we're going to need to cut out the background anyway. So you can view my tutorial over there in the top right. I've already showed how to cut out objects. In that case, that video is talking about making Discord stickers, but this applies to really any image where you're trying to cut something out and isolate the background. So go ahead and do that. And in this case, I'm just going to speed through using the path tool to isolate this background and put it into a new layer. So let me go ahead and do that. Alright, so there you go. I've went ahead and cut out the object from the background. So I just selected from path. I'm gonna copy and paste that onto a new layer. Oops, there we go. And so now you can see it's kind of just duplicated here. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and actually start thinking about what we want to do with this particular image. Now, as you can see, mine already has kind of a blur in the background, but if you wanted to add additional blur or your image didn't have blur to begin with, what you could do is click the background, go into filters, blur, and then Gaussian blur. And you can tweak how much blur you want, and let's just do a very slight blur, just for the example. All right, awesome. And then next step is we're gonna actually create our text and place it where we want it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and type my text, and in this case it's gonna be, since I bought this at London, it's gonna be London, because why not? Size up the text to however you see fit. That's probably a little too big. That's probably better. In this case, I'm probably going to want to rotate it this way, but first I'm going to set the color to the way I like it, and probably black makes the best sense here. So I'm going to use the rotate tool and rotate it to the desired angle, which is probably something like that. Yep. Cool. We want to, the key thing here is to reorder the layers. We want this to be behind the object, the subject. Okay, so I noticed this is a little too big, so I'm just going to go ahead and scale it down using the unified transform tool. Okay, that looks a little better. And then I'm going to bring the text down. Now the reason why this works so well is that your brain is actually really good at filling in the gaps. And having it peek out just a little bit is actually a pretty interesting effect, and I think it works really well on certain images. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do the magic. This is where things get spicy. So the key, the magic here happens when we change the layer mode from normal to something else. And we can play around with this, but some of my favorites I found are soft light, hard light, or overlay. In this case, soft light looks like that. Hard light is a little darker. It doesn't really work for this particular image. Overlay kind of similar to soft light, but a little darker and harsher. And then if you have a text with color, then you can actually use multiply, and that's one of my favorite too. It doesn't really work for black, but let me show you what it looks like with color. So in the case where I wanted, say, a red, this is what a multiply would look like. So as you can see, it's an interesting effect. You can see how it looks there, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave mine at black. So this is basically it. That's the core of it. You can play around with which ones you like, and if it's not quite dark enough or light enough for your taste, you can actually duplicate the layer and make it doubled up, just like that. But I think this looks pretty good as is. And then you can go ahead and export this or crop it, whatever you like, and make this another background. Alright, that was fun, right? Let's do one more example. This time I'll have to do a little more work to make it work, and this is something that I think is pretty common, is to do a little bit of pre-work before you can do it. So we're going to be using the image of the car for this one. Import our image, and yeah, we're basically just going to follow the same steps, but this time we have to do some pre-processing. So first of all, I don't want all this garbage on the right side. I just want the car. So let's crop it in using the crop tool, and then we can change it, unchecking current layer only, to crop the entire image. Then I'll just grab kind of what I want here, which is maybe that much. It's probably about good. Maybe add a little more, but that's probably fine. Okay, now we got the image, and this is not a particularly good image, but this is just for the example. Now the second step again is to cut out the object. This is pretty simple because it's got pretty nice hard edges. So let me go ahead and speed through doing that. Okay, there you go. It is all pathed out. Again, selection from path. I'm going to copy using Control-C, paste, and create a new layer. So as you can see, it's just on that layer. Now what's the next step? The next step is to decide what we want to do with our background. In this case, I definitely want to add a blur, because we got this other car over here, and the focus here is over here. So again, we show our Gaussian blur while having the background selected. Gonna decide how much, maybe just a very subtle blur is probably appropriate here. That's probably a little too much. Okay, that's probably fine for demonstration purposes. So now, next step, add our text. And size it up accordingly. And this is another one where I think a black text on white background would make the most sense. We can put it over here, and if we were feeling spicy, we could even rotate it 90 degrees, to go this way. But I think for this case, let's just keep it pretty simple and put it right up there. Okay, and now the magic. Overlay, soft light, totally up to your preference here. But I think for me, this probably makes the most sense. Okay, and that's pretty decent, and then you could go in later and touch up the colors and get rid of all this graininess. But if you started off with a good image to begin with, you're going to get a good background. Okay, so that's the tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you guys can come up with some really cool backgrounds that will turn heads while you're using your phone or whatever. All right, have a good day. Bye.